Welcome back to Dump It, the podcast where we get into every dirty detail of every story. If you are nosy, this is the place for you. I just wanted to start this week's episode off with a trigger warning because there is going to be some heavy talk of abuse, verbal, emotional, and physical, and also some suicidal ideation and just general sadness. So if that would bother you, feel free to not listen. And I will be changing the names for everyone involved in the story, just for my own safety and for theirs. If you know the people I'm talking about, don't bug them about it. I'm just giving my perspective on things, and I want to get my story out there because who knows, it could help somebody who's in a similar situation who doesn't feel like they have a way out. And I know that when I was in my first marriage, I wish I would have spoken to somebody about how I was feeling, and I wish I knew that other people felt the way I was feeling as well. So this is the story of how I met, married, and eventually divorced my first husband. And we're going to call him Sean in this story. And this was about 6 years ago now, so it's not fresh. I just feel like it's a baggage I carry with me, and I want to kind of get it off my chest. I want to say my piece. I want to say what happened to me because it kind of defined my future. It defined who I was, and it built up a foundation of my character and who I am today. And so I should be allowed to talk about it. I haven't talked about it, and I feel like, I have permission because it's my story. So just to kind of give a little bit of background on me, I grew up extremely insecure. I did not feel confident in myself. I didn't feel comfortable in my body. I was constantly trying to lose weight and perfect myself, and I really felt like the ugly friend in my friend group. I had felt like a background character, like all of my friends were these beautiful, amazing women who got tons of male attention, and then there was me. And that was really difficult. I never felt like I was desirable, and I really wanted to be. I really wanted somebody to want me, and it just seemed like it was never going to happen, and that just made my insecurity spiral out of control. That happened to me in my life. And I can't avoid that I was a very negative and jealous person due to that anxiety and insecurity. And I have to own up to that. So all of that being said, time to dive into the lore of my life. So Sean and I were not friends throughout high school. He was a close friend of one of my best friends. So I knew of him, but we never hung out. We never were in the same kind of social setting. He was just a friend of a friend who I knew of. We had never had a conversation. Then my mom got a job at the local grocery store, and she started working with him. So they would chat all the time, and she would make jokes to him about how he should date me. And she would do the same to me. But I didn't know him, so it was just funny. Then on the day of our high school graduation, he randomly came up to me afterwards, and he asked if we could take a picture together, which I thought was so weird, but I was like really excited because he was pretty cool and he was pretty cute. And he just came up to me first, like he made the first move. And so I was like, of course. So we took a picture together, and then I left, went to dinner with my family, and then my friends and I were going to a party, and he was at the party that we were going to. So we get to this place, and he walks up to the window of the car that my friend is driving, and she rolls it down, and they're talking about where they need to go, like for the party, the next location. And while they're talking, he just looks back at me, and he like knocks on my window, and I roll it down, and he just like leans into the car and says, "Hey, how's it going?" Something super simple like that. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something that was like not that interesting. He just said like, "Hi." But I took that as, oh my gosh, he like sought me out. He gave me this special attention. I was so excited. And it was so charming to me. I was like hooked. And so that night at the party, it was like a bonfire in the mountains. My friend had mentioned to him that I was interested. So before we had ever had our first conversation, we were in the back of somebody's car making out. And I was swooning. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so magical. I'm on top of the world. So after that, we exchanged numbers and we began talking constantly. We started hanging out every single day. We'd go for drives in the mountains or to the movies. And he seemed so incredibly interested in me. And I was falling very hard, very fast. Fast forward about a week into us hanging out. I find out that he actually had a girlfriend that entire time. And this part calls for a little bit more history because it really adds to the difficulty of the whole situation. And it also was a time where I was a giant piece of shit and I need to take accountability and apologize even if she never hears this, because I did some really messed up things to this girl and she did not deserve it. So backtrack. In middle school, I became best friends with, let's refer to her as Amy. And Amy has a twin sister who we'll call Amanda. Amy and I were inseparable for years, and still to this day, I consider her as somebody who is so dear to my heart for the friendship that we shared. Her sister Amanda had a best friend named Laura, and Laura was like the nicest girl to ever live. She legitimately never did anything wrong to me, but for some reason, I just couldn't stand her. Which, obviously I was extremely jealous of her. I was a very jealous friend and I was very insecure. So anytime Laura would hang out with Amy and Amanda, I would get so upset that I would just focus that energy directly at her, at Laura, instead of at myself, and wonder why I felt that way. But I was just so terrified that Amy and Amanda would like Laura better than me and that she would replace me, that I just hated her. Obviously, if you can see where this is going, I found out that Sean had been dating Laura. So this was after a full week of him and I being very much involved with each other romantically. And when I confronted him about it, he reassured me over and over and over again that he was going to break up with her and that they hadn't even had a romantic relationship in the first place. They were just friends and he knew she had a crush on him, so he was kind of giving into it, but he didn't like her. So he kept kind of downplaying things so that I would be like, oh, well, they weren't really dating, so it's not that big of a deal that they haven't broken up yet. And he just said he hadn't seen her in person yet and he didn't want to do it over the phone, but he hadn't talked to her. And so he was planning on breaking up with her, any day now, as soon as he saw her. This should have been my first sign to end things, but I had never felt the way that he had made me feel, and I really didn't want to lose that passion and attention that I was getting because I had never experienced it before. We continued to see each other, and a few days after I found out that he was not single, he told me he was going to go meet up with Laura in person and end their relationship. So I was overjoyed at the fact that in my mind, he was leaving her for me. So I felt like I had won because I had this weird made up competition with her in my head that she didn't know about. And I resented her. So I was like, heck yeah, I got her man. That was so messed up of me to think. I cannot believe I was so horrific to her, but I can't go back and change it. All I can do is tell her that I'm sorry for my actions, 10 years ago now. But while we were talking about him going to meet up with her and end their relationship, I joked that it would be funny if he went to break up with her with a hickey on his neck from me. And he agreed. He thought that was hilarious. So he had a big old hickey on his neck and he went and was going to go break up with her. So I had made plans to see Amy that night because she was wondering what was going on, because I hadn't kind of filled her in on the whole situation with me and him. She knew that we were talking but didn't know how involved we were. So he actually dropped me off at Amy's house. And remember, they had been friends. She knew him. So as I'm filling her in on everything, Laura and Amanda walk into their basement. And Laura was sobbing hysterically. I vividly remember it. She was just bawling her eyes out. And she had come to her best friend's house to get comfort. And the first thing she sees is me. So obviously, she's not happy seeing me sitting there. Laura and Amanda go into Amanda's room. And I literally could hear her crying the whole night. And this was actually one of the last times I had hung out with Amy and Amanda and spent at their house, because the entire situation with Sean did a big number on our years and years long friendship, because both Amy and Amanda had warned me heavily about getting involved with him. They had been close with him. They knew about his tendencies. They knew he was manipulative. He knew he had hurt women. But in my head, I was so convinced that I was different and that he had only acted that way because he hadn't fallen for anyone before, and that I was the one, that I convinced myself, oh yeah, it happened to 15 other girls, but it could never happen to me. He really, really convinced me that I was that person for him. After their breakup, he and I spent a solid month just completely wrapped up in each other. He told me everything I wanted to hear. He was so charming, and I had just never, ever felt so strongly before. Before we had started talking, Sean had enlisted in the military, so he was slated to go to boot camp about a month and a half after our high school graduation. So we knew that our time together was limited, and we very quickly decided that we would not be ending things. It was not just a fling. When he left, we were going to continue to be boyfriend and girlfriend and be long distance. We were going to write each other's letters, and we were going to, FaceTime and do phone calls when he got out of boot camp, and it was going to work fine. So the day that he left for boot camp, we spent making plans for our future, for when we saw each other again. We said goodbye. We talked about writing letters. He gave me one of his necklaces to wear and one of his hoodies. And I was just a wreck when he left. Like, it consumed me entirely. So instead of being an 18-year-old, living it up my first summer out of high school, like, I was not even 18 at this point, mind you. We started talking when I was 17. I'm sitting in my house writing letters back and forth to this man that I had only been talking to for a couple of weeks. And I distanced myself from my friends, my family. All I thought about was when we would see each other again. And I almost fell into like a depression hole, just waiting for some kind of correspondence. He became my entire identity. I became obsessive about the relationship, and I was just so ready to plan out like our future together. So when his boot camp was nearing the end, he invited me to come to his graduation, which was across the country. And he made it seem like nobody was there for him. He made it seem like he had no family that would support him, that I was the only person that loved him and that would come and be there and cheer him on. He made it seem like I was this super important, special person in his life, and that only me and his brother would be going. Like, it sounded like he had invited other people and they said no, which, come to find out, I don't think he even asked any of his family. I'm sure they would have loved to go. But I thought, oh my gosh, I'm the only one there for him. So I saved every penny I earned from my hostess job to pay for that trip. And I was so excited and so proud of him. And we had a really amazing 3 days together after his graduation, before he had to go to his training school. So in my mind, we have this picture perfect, like, movie romance. And I very much knew he was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And this is when I would start kind of dropping hints about getting engaged and getting married one day. And I would joke about it because I did not want to be long distance. And we would have to be long distance due to the military unless we were married. So I was hoping that he would propose and that we would get married as soon as possible, which was like the norm in Utah. You get married so young in the culture of Utah. And that's where I grew up. So I just expected, we like each other, we get married. Shortly after this, things turned sour. Even if I wouldn't admit it, and even if I didn't do anything about it for years, this was like a real big turning point for things. So right after he graduated and he went to his training school, I got a friend request on Snapchat from an account called BeautyBabes123. So I accepted their friend request, and I received a message from them basically saying something along the lines of, "This is someone you know who loves you, and we want to prove to you why you should not be with Sean. I'm trying to protect you, and that's why I did this." And they sent me like pages and pages of screenshot evidence of my boyfriend exchanging nude photos and sexual messages with this fake account. And like, it was so funny because you could clearly tell that the photos that the fake account was sending him were not the same person. Like, it was two totally different people in each picture. Like, a normal person would have been able to determine that this was catfish. But anyway, I felt like sick about this. I felt so distraught. So I confronted him about it. And one thing about Sean is he's a professional gaslighter. Like, he convinced me that it was a one-time mistake, that it would never happen again. He was struggling to adjust to life in the military, and he regretted it so much. And he loved me, and it made him realize how much he loved me, and blah, 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 blah. And I believed him. Like, I just took the bait. But I do want to say, side note, if you were Beauty Babes 123, please tell me who you are, because I've been dying from curiosity for literally 10 years. Thank you for trying to save me from the hardships that I would eventually endure. I wish I would have listened to you. I've like grilled all my friends and nobody will come clean. And so I don't know who it is. Like, I just, please tell me. I won't tell anyone else. I just, I want to maybe buy you a coffee. So we continued our long distance relationship even after this. And this started my insecurities in our relationship because I did not communicate like that. I did not send pictures like that. I did not text like that. And so that is when I started feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not what he wants. And this kind of just would get bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the rest of our relationship. We were planning when we would see each other next. I did not think much about my future at this point. He was my future. He was all I really thought about. He was my whole life. So I decided, okay, hey, I'll just join the military too. Because I thought if we were both in the military, that one, he would like me better because we would have that in common. And two, then we would be able to get married and be stationed at the same place. So I was just like, oh, I'm going to do it, even though I had never, ever considered joining the military in my life. So just funny that I decided to join the military to make a guy like me more. So when I joined the military, my date to go to boot camp was set to be in December. So we knew that he would visit one more time before I left so that we could just spend some time together because we knew it would be a while before we could get together again. So he came the month before I was set to go, and it just felt like we were living in a fairy tale. When we were together, it seemed like we were so perfect and in sync, and we just had so much that we laughed about, and our conversations were amazing. And like looking back on it, I think some of it was like made up in my head. I made it seem better than it was. And a lot of our conversations, I think, were fabricated on his end because he was just so charming. So we spent that week together. The next month I went to boot camp, and then 6 weeks later I was sent home. And the story of how the military and I did not work out is coming soon. It deserves a standalone episode of everything that happened when I was in boot camp. So all I will say for now is I definitely was not built for the military. I returned from boot camp defeated, not as a member of the military, and I went back home to my parents. And I was so disappointed in myself and so afraid about the future. This is when I started really pushing engagement and marriage talk. And I will say 100% I was pushing it. Like, he didn't really bring it up, and I was like, we need to get married. Like, we need to get engaged. We need to get married. If we want to be together, it's time. I went to visit him at his first duty station. He had been stationed there while I was in boot camp, and he was much closer to Utah. So I planned a trip to drive out so that we could spend a little bit of time together because he was going to get like a permanent duty station. And so this was kind of like an in-between place. So I drove out there and we went to the beach and he proposed. And I honestly was blindsided by it. Like, I had no idea that he was planning anything or that it was coming. Like, I had been pushing it a lot, but he wasn't very receptive. So I did not think it was going to happen. But I was over the moon. It was amazing at the time. You know, he had asked my dad permission. My whole family was in on it. Like, it seemed so special. And I just jumped right into planning our wedding. I was so proud to say I had a fiance, and I was so excited to be a wife. And it really felt like, okay, this is what I was made for. This is my life now. My entire identity is becoming his wife. So mind you, I was not even 19 at the time. I had like no life experience. I just lived in Utah, went to high school, and then, okay, I'm a wife now. And we had only been together for 9 months when we got engaged. So after we got engaged, I started planning our wedding for the following year. And I was really stressed over how we would pay for the wedding because neither of us had parents who would be capable of like contributing anything to it. So after a few months of planning and trying to find a cheap venue, I bought a wedding dress that was like way too expensive for me. I had to return it because it was $8,000 and I could not pay for that as an 18-year-old working in retail. And very quickly we found out that it was not possible. We were stressing about this wedding, trying to make it happen. And then we decided, okay, let's just elope. Like, we're just not going to tell anyone and we're just going to get married. So he flew out to visit me in our hometown. This is like 1 year after we started dating. It was 1 month after 1 year. We celebrated my birthday together. And then 10 days later, we got married. We went up in the mountains to our favorite hiking spot. We read letters to each other, and that was that. And my family was there, like my parents and my sisters, and then his two best friends and my best friend came with us, but he did not tell anyone in his family until after. And they were understandably very upset that we got married. And I really didn't know them. Like, this was like one of my first time meeting most of his extended family was when we announced that we were married. And he actually had a cousin who I had gone to high school with because my junior year, I went to a different high school than I had the rest of my years. I had moved 30 minutes away, went to a different high school, and just so happens his cousin, who I didn't know either of them at the time when I attended this school, she went there. And I don't know why, she was not a fan of me. She really didn't like me. And I remember her being so upset with him for marrying me. And marrying me specifically, not just getting married and not telling her, but like marrying me. And I tried really, really hard to get his family to like and accept me. I adored his sister and his grandma, and I would try to spend as much time with him and his mom and his entire family while he was away. Like, I wanted to fit into their dynamic. I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to show them how much I loved them. And in my head, I was like, the more his family loves me, the more he'll love me. The more I do with them, the happier he'll be. And so I just threw myself into that. So then we took a mini honeymoon to where he was going to be permanently stationed, which was Hawaii. So he could show me around where we were going to be living. And I was so excited because like this was my first time there. I had never really lived anywhere else other than Utah. And so I had assumed that on this trip he would introduce me to all of his friends, but he was very against me meeting any of them. He said he wanted to just spend the time as us, focused on the two of us. It's our honeymoon. Like, we're not going to meet any friends. And things really started to shift on this trip. We began fighting over really small things. And honestly, we had not spent much time together. We had dated for a month and then saw each other at a week or so at a time up until this point. So this was like the longest we had consistently been together. And we start fighting over really small things. And if we had like a slight disagreement, he would just stonewall me. We'd be walking down the street, and if he did not like what I said, he would just walk in front of me and pretend I didn't exist. And I had never seen that side of him before this. Like, remember, he was so charming, so lovely, so inviting. When this behavior started, I remember just being overwhelmingly sad because I was so scared of him being upset with me. And so this is when I started really trying to be the perfect partner in order to avoid these fights and like periods of anger and him ignoring me. So I tried to be just, I guess, on my best behavior, which is sad to say. So then after we were married, we knew that he had a deployment coming up like 2 months after we got married. So we postponed me actually moving out to his duty station until he'd be back because we didn't want me to be alone like for months with no friends or family on an island in the middle of the ocean. So I continued to live with my parents and work while he was deployed. And during this deployment, he would email me all the time, every day. He'd call me every single night when I got off work. We'd talk for like an hour, and he would just say like all of these amazing things and make all of these plans. And it was like how he was when he was in boot camp, like making plans for the future and love bombing me and just so perfect. Just describing how much he missed me and he couldn't wait to see me, couldn't wait to be in our home together so we could start our lives. And I was so excited. It finally felt like we were kind of getting back to that, space that we were in before we got married. So his deployment was like 8 months long. And near the end of the deployment, I started planning my move out to Hawaii. This would be his first time moving out of the barracks. It would be my first time moving out of my parents' house. So he had me go to his mom's and pack up all of his belongings so I could bring them with me when I moved to Hawaii. And this is so funny. As I was packing his things, I actually came across papers that showed his ACT college acceptance scores and his ASVAB score. And the ASVAB is the test that you take when you join the military that kind of determines which jobs you are qualified for. And so he had told me that he had very high scores on these tests. And he had told me that he had scored significantly higher than I had on both of these tests. He basically was like, "Oh, babe, you'll do better next time. I did really good on these tests and blah, blah, blah." Like, he just bragged hardcore about how well he did on these. And so when I found the papers, I was quite shocked because he had very low scores, like way lower than I had gotten and way lower than what he had stated he got. And the score is not what mattered to me. Like, he could have gotten a 0 on both and it would not have changed my opinion of him. But him lying about what score he got is what made me feel uncomfortable because it was such a blatant lie and such an unnecessary lie, which he tended to do a lot. But this is when I kind of discovered how easily and effectively he could lie, because it was just so out of nowhere. It was purposeless. Like, he did not need to lie about these things. But still, I did nothing about it. Like, I had brought it up to him and he just made a little joke about it, wrote it off. After I packed up all of our things, I secured us an apartment in Hawaii and I shipped everything out. I flew out there a few weeks before he was coming back from deployment. so I could set up the furniture, buy a car, look for a job, just make sure everything was squared away so that when he got home, he could just be comfortable and we could be together on his arrival. So he had actually given me the contact information for one of the other wives of one of his friends that he was deployed with. So when I got there, we actually flew in the same day and we connected and we became very fast friends and we started doing everything together. And one day she asked me if I had known anything about my husband's relationship with someone named Nancy, who was also deployed with their unit. And I had never heard this person's name until she brought it up. So I definitely did not have any clue what she was referring to. So apparently my friend's husband had told her that this girl Nancy and my husband seemed to be very close. They'd be often like seen together hanging out outside of work hours and just closer than just regular coworkers. So this took me totally by surprise, as he never once mentioned this person to me in the daily conversations and emails that we had. And he would tell me about his friends. Like he would tell me stories about them. You know, he would say, I can't wait for you to meet this person and this person. And, you know, this girl was never brought up. So I was confused and I didn't really know what to think about it because it was just kind of like a he said, she said situation. But it did give me some reservations. It did make me nervous. So I asked my husband about Nancy. And as always, he reassured me that there was nothing going on. It was just silly rumors because apparently, you know, rumors just run wild there. And this girl was just his coworker. And he very quickly switched up on his new friend after this conversation. Their entire deployment, he had been close with this guy. And he really wanted me to connect with his wife. And we were all going to hang out all the time when they got home. But as soon as he found out that his friend told his wife about things with Nancy, he stopped hanging out with him. And he told me horrible things about this person. And he'd complain about him all the time and say he didn't want to be friends with him anymore. He didn't want us to hang out. And so he no longer liked this man who he had spent months telling me was a great friend of his. And I did stay good friends with the man's wife, though, which I'm grateful for because she really was like the only person I had out there for a really long time. And I actually still am friends with that guy. He's awesome. He's still a good friend. And he's somebody who really, really helped me when things got difficult. Flash forward, Sean gets back from deployment. We live in bliss for a few weeks. It's like a honeymoon all over again, like the honeymoon we didn't really have. Everything's amazing. We're happy. We're both living on our own for the first time. We're adventuring, exploring the island. All is well. We adopt a puppy. My sister visits us. Like we're going to concerts and just really having the time of our lives. And then I found pictures. One day I decided to upload the photos that he had taken on his digital camera from his deployment to our computer because, you know, he had all these travel pictures and I wanted to put them on our computer. So when I was uploading these pictures on our computer, I came across what looked like a series of photos of him in a hotel room partying, and it was him and Nancy in a hotel bed together. They were clothed, but their faces were very close together, laying right by each other. So they weren't like being explicit or doing anything in these photos except laying in a bed together with like their faces pressed up against each other, but it made me feel sick. He was so good at explaining his way out of things, though. I knew deep down that things weren't right. I knew he was lying. Like, this is the point where I was like, this is a lie. Like, I know he's lying. I know that he's gaslighting me. But I was so afraid to lose him. I just pushed the thoughts to the back of my mind, and I pretended that there was no way that my husband would cheat on me. Mind you, I had also gained about 30 pounds at this point between our move, which is normal. Like, you don't stay the weight that you were in high school forever. But I, in my mind, interpreted this whole lying, cheating, horrificness to me gaining weight. Because he was very into the gym, very into fitness. So I just thought, oh, I gained weight. It's my fault. So we started fighting more. And in his eyes, I didn't do anything correctly. He wanted to hang out with his friends and he wanted me to stay home. And basically, it was his way or no way. And I was so isolated. I had no friends. My family was on the other side of the world. I barely talked to them because I didn't want to tell anyone what was going on because I was embarrassed because I had devoted my whole life to this person and fought for the relationship against my friends who had warned me that this was going to happen. So I was embarrassed. Like, I didn't want anyone to know. He's out doing his own thing with his friends. I'm sitting at home, isolated, depressed, trying to bring back that spark and joy that we had before, because we had very good times. Like, we were very happy at the beginning, to me, in my eyes. So all I wanted to do at this point was make him happy and kind of rekindle that love, because I could feel him losing interest in me. I started buying him whatever he wanted. Like, if he casually mentioned that he wanted something, I was buying it. I maxed out all of the credit cards I could get, just spending thousands and thousands of dollars on drones and cameras and camping equipment, gaming consoles, like anything that he would like. I'd go out and find it. So I just so badly wanted to be the perfect wife. And mind you, we did not have connected bank accounts. So like this was all my money and his money was separate. He did not want us to have joint bank accounts, even though we were married. We had one joint savings account and we would just put like bills in that, but we both had our own jobs. But my job paid obviously significantly less. And he got paid a lot more for having a dependent when he was in the military. I'm maxing out my credit cards. I'm being financially irresponsible, trying to save my marriage, trying to make this man happy. And obviously, like, that's my bad. I shouldn't have been so stupid. I should have been better with my money. I just thought, I can make more money, but I've got to save this relationship. I got to make this man fall back in love with me. I'll buy him whatever he wants. Let's do it. It didn't really work. He didn't seem interested in me. Even though no matter what, like I was trying to be the perfect wife so bad. I was cooking, I was cleaning, I was trying to make friends with his friends and being fun. And it sounds so silly now, but like he just wasn't interested. He wouldn't really post me on his social media without me begging for it, which made me even more insecure because I was like, why won't he post me? Does he think I'm ugly? He won't talk about me to people. It's like I was like this hidden, thing that he was ashamed of. It literally felt like he was embarrassed of being married to me. And I attributed that to me not being pretty enough. So we're now about a year into me being married. I'm living in a different state. I start to hear new rumors about Sean and a new girl he's working with. So let's call her Blair. So Blair was practically perfect. And all my husband's friends would like regularly talk about her. They'd all come into our house and just rant and rave about how amazing she was. And my friend, the same one that I was talking about earlier, she had heard from her husband that it seemed like Sean and Blair would spend a lot of time together at work. But Sean told me that they had to do that because of their roles and their jobs. So this is when I start to kind of lose my mind because I was hearing from so many different people about this girl, Blair. I knew in my gut that something was going on. Like, when you just know somebody's cheating on you, but you have no proof. I knew he was cheating on me. One night, we threw a small party at our house and she showed up with their friends. And Sean and her just talked all night right in front of my face. They played beer pong. They were just like so close and laughing. And they were in our house. And I was visibly upset. I pulled him aside and I said everyone needed to leave. And like, this is something I would do. I would just get overwhelmed and I would say, everybody out. Everybody needs to go home. It's done. Party's over. Because like, I was not a party girl. I did not want to sit and drink and go wild. I wanted to watch a movie and cuddle on the couch. But I would host these parties all the time because I wanted to be the cool wife and I wanted his friends to like me. So there was always people at our house. And so I kind of lost it. Like, if you hung out with my ex-husband during this time, you probably just thought I was batshit insane because I was just always so angry and uncomfortable and like telling everybody to leave. But he got really angry this night. So he said, fine, everybody would leave, but he was going to leave with them. And he did. He left with Blair. And I cried at home by myself until I threw up. And he just wouldn't respond to my calls, wouldn't respond to my texts, didn't know where he went. And this turned out to be a pretty regular thing. So I would freak out about him and Blair because somebody would tell me something. He would freak out at me for accusing him. And then he would leave. And I would have no idea where he was for hours, sometimes even for days. And I would just go insane. I would be calling people, texting his friends, trying to figure out where he was and who he was with. I became so insecure, like so much more than I had ever been in my whole life. And I really thought I was the problem. I really thought he was spending so much time with this girl because I had gained weight. So I thought if I looked better, he would not feel the need to talk to this other woman. So I developed a strong friendship with another girl from his work that was very into the gym and fitness. And she started training me at the gym. So her and I would spend nearly 4 hours a day in the gym every single day. We would take like one rest day. And during that rest day, I would not rest. I would still work out because I was so afraid that I was going to lose my marriage if I didn't lose weight. I would wake up every single morning at 3 a.m., go to the gym for 2 hours with her, go to work, then go back to the gym for another hour or two afterwards. I became super restrictive with my diet and I would eat like less than 800 calories a day. And I dropped a lot of weight very fast. Like I dropped 40 pounds in I think a month and a half or so. And I thought I was in the best shape ever. Like, I thought I was at the peak of fitness. And a lot of people were complimenting me. Guys at the gym would come up and say, I see your progress. You're doing a great job. I loved the praise. Like, I really enjoyed being thin. I had never been thin in my life, that thin before. I had never been in that good of shape in my mind. And I really liked the attention I was getting from it. I finally felt like I was pretty. And I finally felt like, okay, this is going to fix my marriage because I look better. I thought if I kept dropping weight and I kept going to the gym because he loved the gym, that it would restore our marriage and he would stop talking to other girls. But it only got way worse after this. So now we've established that I would have done literally anything to make my husband fall back in love with me. I had begged him to go to marriage counseling, which he actually agreed to after a while. I think just to get me to shut up because I was I was constantly harping about it. So we did start going to marriage counseling. It was free on the military base. And he very much so in therapy made me feel like I was the problem, like I had already felt. He said I was too controlling, I was too insecure and too needy, which I totally was. I was very controlling. I was so afraid that he was going to cheat on me every time he left the house that I never wanted him to leave the house. I was so afraid for him to go to work because I heard about him and this girl at work. And I was insecure. I was incredibly insecure. And I always had been, but it was at its peak. And I was very needy. Like, I constantly just wanted that reassurance that he loved me. And so, yeah, I was all of those things. So at this point, my mental health was dwindling. And I started to have really strong suicidal ideation, which I had never had before in my life. The fights between Sean and I were becoming daily occurrences. He would disappear at night. And I would just spend hours driving around, sobbing, trying to find him, trying to figure out where he went, trying to figure out who he was with. And then I would go home and I would just lay there by myself in this house in this, state that I didn't know anybody. And I would just be like, wow, I can't do this. And I can't go home. I can't embarrass myself. I didn't believe in divorce. What other choice do I have? I thought, if I don't have my marriage, what do I have? So meanwhile, I'm portraying our relationship online as the ideal marriage. Not a single person knew what was happening because I didn't want them to know. I did not tell a single soul how difficult things were and how horrible it had gotten because I did not want to admit to myself that all of the warnings that I had been given in the beginning of the relationship were true. I so badly wanted to be the one to change him and be good enough for him that I couldn't take it. I couldn't tell anybody and I couldn't ask for help because that would be admitting it. So I just lived in this depression and sadness that was so big. So one night after I had tried to follow him when he was leaving, Sean hid my car keys and he started hiding my car keys before starting an argument so that I would be unable to leave and try to find him afterwards or try to follow him to wherever he was going. There I am. Now, carless, can't get anywhere, can't follow him, sitting at home, spiraling, wondering where he is. There was no thing like we didn't have a Find My Friends or we didn't have each other's location, so I just really never knew where he was. So around this time, he turned 21 and I was still only 20. So he would go out to bars with friends and I could not even attempt to go because I wasn't 21 yet. And during my conversations with my family, I think they could tell, but I wasn't okay, but I wouldn't tell anyone why. So before I turned 21, my parents decided to fly me home to visit them and see if some times with friends and family would make me feel better. So they had no idea there was marriage problems. They just thought I was struggling with being away from home. So they flew me back home. My husband dropped me off at the airport. He gave me a big show about how much he would miss me while I was gone. He kissed me, told me he loved me, all that charm that he was so amazing at. So I fly home. The same night that I fly home, my friend called to tell me that my husband was at a bar with Blair. And she had seen them together. So she took a picture of them and she sent it to me. So he didn't know. He didn't see her there. But she snapped a picture of them and there he was sitting with her at the bar and she was almost entirely on his lap. And it was just the two of them. There were no other friends around. And it's like 5 hours after I had left. He would claim that it was a group of friends out together and they just happened to run into her. But by the photo that was taken, it was very clear that that was not true. And I had a full mental breakdown. I messaged Blair. I begged her to please stay away from my husband. I booked a flight home immediately. I told my parents there was an emergency and I had to get back. And I got on a plane. Like, I couldn't take it. And so, yeah, I begged Blair, please stop. Please understand you're hurting me. Please don't talk to my husband. He's a married man. But through all of this, I had no intentions of leaving him. Like, I felt like we could fix it. I thought I needed to do more to be what he wanted and that we could get back to normal again. So I'm still placing the blame on myself. I'm still thinking, oh, he's actively cheating on me, but if I improve myself, he'll stop and he'll love me. I return home and we do have a period of happiness. I turned 21. We started going out to bars and clubs almost nightly. We were drinking heavily, like nonstop. And with drinking, of course, will come anger and fighting. So at this point, I knew when a fight started that he was planning to leave and ghost me for days on end. So I would try to block the door so that he couldn't go anywhere. Like, I would just stand in front of the door and he would forcibly move me. So this is when things started turning physical. So like, I would try to block the door. He would move me out of the way. He would, most of the time, just throw me behind him because he was much stronger than I was. So he would just move me. And I'm not going to recount like every single instant of our fighting, but I do remember the worst times. So I think one of the very worst times where I was very reactive in the situation, I don't know why we were fighting, but he was trying to leave. And he had hidden my car keys. So after he had thrown me out of the way from the front door, I just lost it. I chased after him and I blocked his car so he couldn't leave. I actually laid down underneath his car. So like, he was in his car, he was about to pull away, and I just laid down under the tire because I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, if you're going to leave and you're going to go be with somebody else again, just run me over. I don't care. Like, either kill me or come inside. And I wouldn't move. I wouldn't budge. So he tried pulling me out from under the car. He tried kicking me, pulling me by my arms, by my hair, but I wasn't budging. Like, I was like a rock. I was stuck there. So finally, I thought he was walking back into the house because he got out of the car. He walked inside, cussing me out. So I got into his car and I sat in the front seat so that he could not try to leave once I went inside. So he was enraged by this because I got the car keys. He was so mad. He came back outside and he pulled me by my hair over the center console and the passenger seat, and he carried me into our house. And I just remember being carried into the house and thinking, all of our neighbors can see this. Like, why is nobody doing anything? Why has nobody done anything any of the times that things have gotten physical? Like, I'm screaming. We're screaming at each other. Why is nobody doing anything? So when he brought me inside, he threw me to the ground and he proceeded to like violently choke me, which he would do more than once when we fought. Like, if he would get too heated, he would just like, I guess he was like trying to tell me to be quiet, like stop prolonging the fight. So he would choke me so that I couldn't get up when he was leaving and follow after him. So he was choking me, and then he got up and he left. And I remember being like, how am I going to go to work? Because I'm going to have bruises on my neck. And how am I going to cover them up? And somebody's going to say something. And I don't want anyone to know what he did. So I was nervous about somebody thinking badly of him if they saw bruises on my neck. So, and I wasn't innocent in this. Like, I was freaking out. Like, I was being a crazy person. I was laying behind cars. I was screaming at him. I was sobbing uncontrollably. Like, I was being so reactive. I remember another night when we weren't even fighting. He just decided that he didn't want to be home with me, even though nothing had happened. We'd have a totally normal night. So I begged him to tell me what I could do to make him stay at home. Because, like, I was completely alone. Like, he'd leave and he had friends. I did not have anybody. So if he left, I would be by myself. And I couldn't call anybody because I didn't want to tell anybody what was going on. So I would just be alone. And he told me that he would stay home if I took 10 consecutive shots of tequila. So I said, cool, yeah, I'll do it. I'll literally do anything for you. You could tell me to walk off the side of a building, I'd do it. So I line up the shots and I take them one by one. I think I actually only took 6 because, like, first of all, I didn't drink. I never drank. Like, I wasn't a heavy drinker. I drink, like, when we'd go out, but I was drinking 3 drinks. Like, I was done at 3 drinks. So I think I had taken, like, 6 shots. And I had gotten extremely sick. So I started throwing up for like hours and I was stuck on the bathroom floor. So here I am, horribly ill, laying on the bathroom floor. He never comes in to check on me. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't bring water, none of that. So finally I get up and I assume he's like in bed sleeping or something. And I walk around the whole house and I was alone. And I just remember feeling so hopeless in that moment. Like, oh, I did this thing that he wanted me to do. And now I'm so sick and he still left. And like he knew that I was so sick and he still left. Like he still went wherever he wanted to go and left me by myself. And that night, I think this was one of the lowest nights I had. I remember sitting in my bed and I had taken every single pill bottle from our medicine cabinet and I laid it out in front of me. And I just thought about how much happier he would be if I took them all. And I was just ready to die. Like I was so done with my life. I was so sad. I was so tired of feeling that way. So I took like this pack of NyQuil. I definitely did not take, I took like 6 NyQuil, which I thought would end it all. But no, I just slept for like 20 hours. Didn't die, just got a really good night's sleep. I think the final straw was a night after one of our fights. My friend called to say that he had ended up over at another one of his friends' houses at a party. So I knew where he was, which I never knew where he went after we fought. So knowing where he was, I drove over to that friend's house, and one of his coworkers' wives met me out front, and she told me that he had just left and he had gone downtown with Blair. And I just fell to pieces. Like, it was just confirming it all. Because I only speculated. I didn't have physical proof. I didn't have proof that he was doing things with her. I just felt it in my gut. And so when she came out and told me that he had gone downtown with her, I just lost it. She had also told me that she had gone to their work so she could bring her husband lunch. She saw my husband, Sean, bringing Blair lunch too. And so it was like almost a joke at this point. Everybody around us knew that they had something going on. Like even I knew it, but I was just too stupid to admit it and to end things. Like I was probably the laughing stock of that entire military base because he was so blatantly not in love with me. And I was just like hanging on to him like a little puppy. This is when he began talking about divorce, because obviously I lost it about that. I had never been raised to consider getting divorced. Like in my mind, when you're married for life. I grew up very religious and divorce was like a sin to me. So I begged him to please give marriage counseling a chance because the counselor wanted us to go through like this program that was like 10 weeks long. It was a course. And he had promised to give it a chance throughout the course of the program. So he's considering divorce. I'm begging him, please, no, let's not get divorced. Let's finish out this program that the therapist gave us, but like, please give it a chance. Please actually try and do what the program is saying. And so he agrees. He says, we won't get divorced until we finish that program. So for the next 10 weeks, things were very happy. Like we went to counseling. We seemed to be putting in the work to fix our problems. Like I thought he was listening to what the therapist was saying. I thought we were getting somewhere. And I was trying to be like the world's least controlling, least needy, nicest wife ever. We were going out with friends. We were going on trips. Like we went on this amazing vacation. We went on 2 amazing vacations, actually. And I just thought that things were going to be okay. Like finally, it felt like we were in love again. So then we finish up our counseling program. Everything's good. And one night after dinner, Sean and I were cuddling on our couch and we're watching a movie. So it's like 8 p.m. and we get a knock at our door. And this was really strange because it was really late. And we also lived like on the military base. So I was like, who the heck is knocking at our door? So I get up and answer it. And I said, hello. And this man that I had never seen before handed me an envelope and he said, you have been served. And he was handing me divorce papers. This was obviously a shock to me. I fell to the floor sobbing. And Sean just picked up his jacket and he said, I'll leave. And of course, I didn't want him to leave. Like I was like, please no, please no, please no. Like, please talk to me about this. And he left and I was once again all alone. And I was too embarrassed to call anyone and tell them what was going on. So I just sat by myself once again. Like I just held those divorce papers, read them over and over and over again. And this is probably the lowest point I have ever been in my life. I can't try to defend my actions at this point, saying that I was mentally unwell, because I did things that were also inexcusable and very much so against my character. Like things that to me, I would never do in a million years, I was doing at this point in my life. Like I just was so upset. And I just stopped caring. So I started drinking very heavily at this point. I'd go down to the the clubs in Honolulu nightly. And I was just trying to forget who I was. Like, I became unrecognizable to myself. And so one night, about a month after the divorce papers, because I would not sign them. Like, I was like, we're not getting divorced. I'm not going to sign them. And so it was like a constant battle of him wanting me to sign the divorce papers and me not wanting to sign them because I thought we could fix things. So one night I went out with a group of our friends, and he had to stay behind at work. He had to stay overnight at work. So he didn't go with us. And so I went out with all of these friends, and I ended up hooking up with one of my husband's coworkers while I was nearly blacked out. And when I sobered up, I told him, like I told Sean immediately, and he was infuriated, which, like, I'm still not sure why he was infuriated, because he had already given me divorce papers at this point and clearly didn't want to be with me or love me and hadn't loved me for a long time. But like, this is when I knew that there was no coming back for us, because now he had something to pin on me. Like, he had told everybody that we were divorcing because I cheated on him. And I can't deny it, because we were married. Like, we were still married, but it wasn't really a marriage. We weren't like in love, happy together. But it was a mistake. Like, I can't believe I did that, and I regret it. And it's one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. But I'm almost happy I did it, because it pushed me to finally, like, knowing that there was no coming back and knowing I should stop fighting for things. So I signed the divorce papers, and I don't take anything. I don't ask for anything. The only stipulation that I put into the divorce papers was that he needed to send me our dog when I got back to our hometown, because we lived in Hawaii. I was trying to get home quickly. So I just said, okay, I'll leave. I will divorce you. I'll sign the papers. Please just send me my dog. You know, clean cut ties. Please send me my dog. Because she was all I had that entire time, was my dog. I had nobody, no family, no friends. I had my puppy, and she loved me. Like, she was the best dog. So, I will cry just thinking about her. Anyway, don't cry the entire time talking about my horrible marriage and then cry thinking about my dog. I signed the divorce papers with just that expectation that he would send me my dog at a later date once it got all squared away, because it's a process to fly the dog home. So the day that I was flying home, he turned back into like that charming man that I had originally fallen in love with. He was cuddling me. Like, the divorce papers were signed at this point. I was leaving that day. I was moving out. And like, he was cuddling me on the couch. He was kissing me. He spent the entire day with me, and he was acting like we were like still in love, still married. Like, it was very confusing for me, because I'm about to leave and he's back to normal. And so then I'm thinking, is this a mistake? Should we not sign the divorce paper? Should we rip them up? Should we stay married? And obviously at this point I realized he was just messing with my head. But this made it extremely difficult for me to have any closure, because I had thought we were done, and then this kind of left the door open to me. So I fly home, and he continues to talk to me. Like, he would text me every day. We talk on the phone every night, even after the divorce papers were finalized. He would tell me he missed me. He would say, let's try again. Maybe we should just remarry. Like, it was a mistake. I think he just kind of wanted to keep me on the hook, just in case, I guess, the grass wasn't greener. But it was very confusing. I legitimately felt like a crazy person. I didn't know what was real and what was a lie. I moved back home, and he sold our dog. I found out that he got rid of our dog pretty much like right after I moved out. He had no intentions of sending her to me at all. And like, the minute I was out the door, he made a Tinder. I was given updates from, people I knew in Hawaii that he immediately started dating a new girl like the second I was gone, even though he was still reaching out to me regularly and telling me he loved me and missed me while he's dating this girl. It just didn't make any sense. So after our divorce was finalized, I really just like spiraled into oblivion. I was crying all day, going out, drinking constantly. Like, I was going out with random guys just to kind of feel desirable again. And he had actually visited our hometown to see his family, and we met up after our divorce, like a couple weeks after. And we saw each other, and we went out to eat, and we drove around, and he told me how much he loved me and how much he missed me. And then come to find out, that same time he was visiting, he started actively dating a new girl that was friends with his cousin from the high school that I had gone to. And she was somebody I knew. And it just seemed like history would always repeat itself, only I was on the other side of things at this point. 4 months later, after my divorce, I connected with my now fiance, And that's when I slowly started to kind of dig myself out of that hole and turn my life around. At this point, I was in crippling debt from the money that I spent trying to win Sean over. So I had no future goals. I had no career path. I had no money. I had no hobbies. I really didn't even have a personality outside of being somebody's wife. I just had to put in the work. I worked on my relationship with my current fiance. I went back to the gym. Like I went rock climbing again. Like all the things that I had liked before getting married, I tried to start doing again. But it took me a very, very long time to overcome the trauma that my first marriage caused me. And it caused a lot of problems in my relationships after. Like my current relationship, I have to explain my thinking because I'm always thinking that my fiance is mad at me. Like he'll say the silliest thing and I will think that he's upset with me. And then I just assume the worst. And so it's really hard to overcome that mindset when you've lived in it for so long. But it took me a long time. It took me a long time to find, what I liked. It took me a lot to rebuild financially. Only recently did I really get out of that hole that I had put myself into. Coming out the other side, it really made me a better person. It made me have a lot deeper understanding for people who stay in relationships that they shouldn't be in. It's very hard to leave when you love somebody. And you will excuse nearly anything if you love someone enough. I'm grateful that it happened, but I had to start over from nothing. I left Hawaii with 2 suitcases and $300 to my name. But I believe the experience of completely rebuilding my life and finding my own identity had to happen to get me to where I am today. I now have a beautiful family. I have a very successful career. I have amazing friends. I have a wonderful home where my children can grow up happily with parents who love each other so much. And none of that would have happened if I didn't go through everything with my first marriage. I forgave my ex-husband for the things that he did a long time ago. We were young, we were dumb, and we're just people. I was not innocent in the downfall of our marriage either. We both contributed to the toxicity, and we never should have been married in the first place. We hardly knew each other. We had no idea the commitment that we were making, and neither of us had even lived on our own prior to our relationship. There's so many more things that I could tell. There's so many more stories. There's so much more, but it would take like 20 episodes. So I'll just leave it at this. All I can hope for somebody else who's currently in a toxic relationship because they hope that things will change, please care about yourself enough to know that you are worth so much more. If you find yourself wishing that your partner will change and hoping that you could do things to make them happy, maybe just take a step back and realize if this is a good situation for you or not. And I understand it's hard to get out of it, but it's worth it. I kind of feel embarrassed talking about this so long after it happened. I'm not trying to stir up the past or make him look bad. He lives his own life. I live my own life. But I have carried this trauma with me for years, and it is a heavy, heavy burden. And I felt like I had to stay silent, but it was a huge part of my life and it happened. And I don't want to feel like I have to keep that part of my life secret. So here I am and I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go. Thank you for listening. I promise not all my episodes will be as heavy as my first 2, but these were my biggest pieces of my puzzle that I needed to get out there. So fun things to come in the future. Thanks. Bye.